what we do daily and think nothing about really does have cyber implications that we should, like, again, come back to, if nothing else. I get that I want to know the flower, so I download it, and then I'm like, okay, what did I just get?
Hi, I'm Eric.
I'm Mike.
And welcome to the Cyber Sitrep.
Oh, 2 in a row. We're going strong.
Yeah, that's what we said last time, too.
Jinx.
Yeah, right. Well, hopefully we can keep it up. So,
exactly.
Welcome, everybody. Hopefully your day is going well. Ours day is going well as well. God, well as well. I can't even talk now. It's great. We had a very busy week, very productive week. And on that note, Mike, you were kind of creative this week with some of our topics that we wanted to talk about. Speaking of which,
sometimes neurons fire and things happen. So, today we're going to talk about phone apps and are they secure?
Ooh, good one.
A lot of people, most of us now live on our phones. Phone is no longer a phone. We do more things on the phone than actually phone.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike. You're absolutely right. I mean, I was just thinking about that actually earlier this morning. I'm like, I would be dead meat without my phone, right? Because I hardly ever use it for voice calls anymore. It's texting. It's using applications.
I avoid the actual
crazy.
Phone call part of it as much as possible.
I do too, but all right, thanks for making me look bad on
No,
air.
that's
me.
Great.
That's right.
Like, I don't want my phone for a phone.
Exactly.
It's really a mini computer now in our palm.
It is, and we use it for everything, and apps are ubiquitous. They're all over the place, regardless of what platform you're on, Android, iOS.
And you're getting ads for apps in your apps.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm on the gram, and all of a sudden I'm getting
right
ads for other apps.
Right.
It's a computer within a computer that, talk about Matrix. We're digging in deep.
Exactly. White rabbit.
That's right.
Sorry. So Mike, was there any inspiration for this Sitrep that made you want to choose this topic to talk about?
Well, in the news, everyone's heard of TikTok and the big fear over TikTok. And, who's watching, who is listening, where's my data going? And I started thinking about all the apps on my phone, and I'm like, I don't ask that question for probably 90% of my apps. It's, here's an app that says it'll identify any flower. Love it. Download it.
Right.
And now I'm identifying flowers.
Right. Exactly.
Who gets that data? Where does it go?
Right. And, show of hands, how many people actually read the end user license agreement on every app when they download it?
No.
All the mouse print? Nobody does, right? We don't either. We just don't have time, right?
And that's where I got in with the TikTok, where people are like, oh, they can't be doing all this. I go, well, did you actually read the terms and conditions?
Yep.
Nothing is free, and they're telling you exactly what they're going to capture in your data. And it's a lot more than you probably thought they would or think they need to know.
On that note, I do appreciate the companies that spell it out in plain terms, that don't use weasel words and legalese to explain things, and then you lose cabin pressure when you start to read that, and you're like, oh man, because it's all one-sided, right, on their end. But then you get back to your point of, I really want to be able to identify any kind of flower out there. So you do that calculus in your head, and the pros outweigh the cons, and you install the app.
Absolutely, and then you start to scroll, and then you realize it's 47,000 pages of text, and you're like, oh no. And then you start flipping instead of scrolling,
because you're out and about. You stop somewhere for lunch, and you see a really cool flower, and you've got to have that fixed now. You want to know, what is it? What is that flower now? Right? It's our immediate fixation on things.
Our attention span of a gnat.
We could do a whole nother Sitrep on end user license agreements, terms of service, T's and C's, terms and conditions, all that.
Exactly,
right?
And we don't read them. We click through, and I like to joke with my students, for all we know, our firstborn child has been given away because I didn't read it that close. It could have been in there.
Wasn't that the South Park, one of the South Park things, wasn't it, with the Apple terms of conditions? Yep. And they ended up doing the human centipede thing because of that, because they didn't read the terms properly.
Actual terms, So it happens, and it's out there, and I couldn't even tell you the number of apps. How I kind of came to this was I was loading a mobile device manager onto my phone.
Okay.
And one of the things you want to do is register your apps.
Yes.
And I thought, I'll have a few apps here that I can register as I'm scrolling through all the apps that are on my phone that I'm like, I don't use these anymore. Why are they still there?
Exactly.
And because we don't get rid of them either, we're like,
And they keep updating in the background. And they keep collecting that data.
Exactly.
All unbeknownst to us, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And so, I always think, so applications are great. They're good tools, but should we be concerned about that data that they're collecting?
Right.
And my personal thought is, to some extent, I should at least be aware.
Right.
And with that is can you trust it? Can you trust the stores you're even getting them from? Because I hear a lot of people just tell me, well, the flour thing, well, it came from the Apple store.
Right.
It's got to be good.
Exactly.
And
so terms and conditions aside, is the software safe, right?
Right.
That's basically what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Is it really doing what it says it's doing, or is there some kind of nefarious, backdoor function, aka Trojan, going on there, doing things that you're not aware of, that you didn't agree to? Let's talk about marketplaces.
And we see that all the time, because Android and Apple just have a small criteria to get listed.
Right.
Not, you promise not to steal. You promise this app is really going to put the money where you say it is. It's the app fits a certain category. It's not a part of their banned categories as far as adult or something like that.
Right.
But if you're skimming data or taking a penny out of every transaction or something, they don't check for that. They don't care. It's just an app on their store. They're making a percentage.
So, Mike, if I could summarize that, though, well, first of all, let's just say this right now: we're not cheerleaders for either ecosystem.
Nope.
We're not going to beat up Apple. We're not going to beat up Google.
No.
But realize that they have their own mechanisms for vetting, and there is some vetting that occurs on both of those ecosystems. Whether it's sufficient or not, that's a totally different argument. We're not going to jump into that, right? Because we don't want to get beat up for that.
But you want you to be aware that.
Exactly.
Just because it's there doesn't mean it's a totally legit, perfect app. To the same with Facebook ads and other things that people assume if it's on here, it's safe. It's not true.
Yeah. It's better than having no review. But
absolutely.
It may be inconsistent. So just something to keep in mind. Don't think that's a silver bullet and think because you're in the iOS ecosystem that you're going to be a lot more secure than Android. I mean, there's been cases on both sides where stuff has gotten through, and thank God we have people that reverse engineer this stuff for us as a hobby, look at this stuff to see what it really is doing. And when they see those apps doing that bad stuff, then they contact Apple and Google and say, hey, you've got a problem with this app. And it happens all the time, right? That's the scary part.
Yep.
Thank God we have those people that do that, but it's not going away. So, so due diligence is what we're saying here, right?
Absolutely. Knowing what you have, what it's collecting, and there are tools within your phone that you can look up each app and then say, hey, what's the data this is collecting?
Once again, he's always a step ahead of me, guys. I love it. That's why you've got the cool shirt.
Fire about the
and
same
I don't.
time.
Right. Well, no, I can see yours fire, and then I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to fire, and then it fires. And I'm like, okay, I kind of got that. So to Mike's point, there are ways to vet. Right?
Yes.
To look at that yourself and do, based on crowd reputation, right? I mean, you can look at the reviews, obviously, for the app, but you can also use third-party tools. You can use web searches to look for, are there any known compromises against that app? And yes, that will slow down looking at your flowers by just a couple of minutes, but it will give you a little bit more of a warm fuzzy.
Or at least go back and say, should I have downloaded this app to find out that was a...
Now let me delete it, right? And let's start that fight, right? Because here's the thing, too, right? I would wager, and I haven't looked, I have no idea, but I bet if we looked right now, we would find multiple apps that do the same thing, right? Because competition is great in the marketplace. So the one you picked, if it turns out to not be a good fit for you in your security walk, well, look for an alternative and do the same thing, research that. It's not the end of the world because we want you to be able to find your flowers, right? When you want to.
But I wanted to be one that actually knows the flowers. That people have said this is 90% accurate versus...
Without stealing all of your personal data and sending it somewhere nefarious, right?
And I picked that as my example because when you do that, because I actually downloaded an app to do this, you take a picture.
Oh, let me get that. You downloaded an app to check the app.
No, to take a picture of the flower and find out what the flower was.
Yes, got it. Okay, I'm tracking.
But you have to take a picture of the flower.
Right.
It's not just using the camera. You take a picture. Well, what does that have? That has your geolongitude. You know what I mean?
No, now you're putting your hacker hat on.
Right.
Yes.
So now they know exactly where I was on the planet when I took a picture of this flower.
Time of day.
Are they tracking that? Right. Do they care about that?
Short answer is maybe.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I go into the app afterwards, and if you go in, I use an iPhone, but for Android, I know there's other tools to do it. But you can actually open the app, and it tells you what data is being collected from it.
Right.
And you can then decide, why does it need to know my location?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. Yeah, all the metadata that
it may need to, because that flower in Colorado might be distinct or something.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there could be a legitimate use case there.
Right.
So,
but if it's like we also track your spending on this app, I'm like, no, you're a flower app. You don't need to know why.
You don't need to
I
access
spend on something else.
Right. No, I agree. And once again, man, this is a can of worms. Man, what a way to start our.
That's why it just started me thinking that you know. What we do daily and think nothing about really does have cyber implications that we should, like, again, come back to, if nothing else. I get that I want to know the flower, so I download it, and then I'm like, okay, what did I just get?
Right. Because if you have a malicious app on your phone, and you just mentioned mobile device management, if you're not doing that properly, then you could expose yourself to having your company data compromised off that device. That's a bad day, right?
Right. And we had a real world case of this where we had a client that used a personal device, had apps and things on it. It was breached, and then that got into their work environment. So things can happen.
Yeah. So So we're not just being Chicken Little here, right?
Yeah.
This is a real world scenario. So.
And I ask everyone for all of the apps. We're like, oh, I got a free app. Is it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Is it free? How can they afford to give everyone an app? What are they getting from it?
So there we were earlier this week. We were teaching a group of aspiring entrepreneurs starting their business walk on how they could do cybersecurity low cost, right? And that was one of the questions that came up about free services.
Yep.
And the joke is, if the app is free, then you're the app, right? You're the product. If the product is free, then you're the product, right?
Yep.
And you could literally hear the silence was palpable.
Yep.
Because they hadn't thought of that before, right? They're so focused on their business that when we explained it, they're like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense," and then they got paranoid.
Right. Because it's doing something for you, and you're like, "Wow."
Right.
But if you stop and thought, would I give someone this stuff for free?
Right. I mean,
what
odds
am I
are
getting
they are not
it?
a charity, right? They're not a 501(c)(3). C3. I always get that wrong. And so they have to monetize it somehow, right? To keep offering said app. So how are they doing that?
That's your data.
That's your data, all of your data, or as much as you agree to, right, in the terms and services.
Exactly. And going back to just using that flower one, if they're tracking my location, do they just track it by the picture I took?
Right.
But if I gave it permission, track by location, technically they can track me 24/7 where I am with the phone.
Right.
Because I agreed that they could have my location data.
Right.
And they can find out, hey, he loves this store, and this store, because he's there all the time.
And then sell that to advertisers to say, hey, Mike, we've got seeds for this exotic plant that you saw for the low cost of blah, 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 right?
Exactly.
And that could be a legitimate use, and some of you out there may enjoy that, right? Having that targeted marketing. More power to you. That's great. But for the majority of us, it's kind of creepy, right?
Well, and I don't know how many people out there, but you think of Bermuda would be nice this time of year, and then all your ads turn out to be Bermuda this time of year, and you're like, how did they get into my thoughts?
Right. And you're like tinfoil hat, right? Obviously.
I got to cover this up.
And then when you look back with that other app you're talking about of everything that app records, it also has the mic.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, come on.
It's listening. It's always listening.
It's always listening.
So that's why my advice is I do say Bermuda out loud a lot because I want all my ads to look beautiful.
Nice.
So
I love it.
If you're going to have targeted ads, target it the way you want, even if you can't go there or aren't planning to go there.
I just want to say to everybody, I'm really glad, Mike, you're on the good side because you are an evil man. I love it. I love thinking
trained to think like a criminal. So
absolutely. Well, you got that down, sir.
I did. I try.
You got that down. Wow. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a background check, guys. I'll let you know how it comes out. You think you know somebody. All right, Mike.
It's a flower app.
So close us out on this whole apps thing. I know it's a flower.
It's just a flower app. It's just a flower app. So applications are awesome, and I'm not saying we shouldn't use them because they provide great purposes. To Eric's point, there's many out there. So I want a flower app. I just happened to pick one willy-nilly because it was the first one that popped up.
Right.
But if you're thinking ahead, plan ahead, look ahead, do reviewing. And if you don't, like I did, go back and go, is this the right app? Should I keep this app? What data is it collecting?
Right.
And find the one that fits you and what you want it to do.
Right. So don't be lazy. Right. To put a little bit of effort into this, and you'll have a much better time with your apps.
Because I'm with you. I won't read the TNC, the terms and conditions. I don't have time for that.
I have occasionally back in the good old days, but I'll admit it, I don't nearly as much as I should.
We should.
Yeah, we should.
Technically, you're signing a legal document.
We're guilty just like everybody else. Yep. You know, yeah, you are. It is a legally binding contract when you accept that. So
if you find time later in your board,
right,
it's available. You can read it.
And my closeout would be what you had said is, go back and look at your apps on a regular basis.
Exactly.
And if you're not using them, what is it? The lady says, if it doesn't bring you joy, then get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Exactly.
Do that with your apps as well, and try to keep that down to a manageable, sum.
Exactly, and it's going to be out there. If it's a good app and you just haven't used it,
right?
My favorite one, my
Funny
Fitness
how that
Pal.
Works.
I go through phases. I'm going to get fit, so I have my Fitness Pal.
Right.
And then I'm like, I'm not keeping this up. Why am I doing this? Delete it.
Right.
So.
Well, in one final closing statement, Squirrel brought it up when you mentioned, the good apps stay around. I call that the wisdom of the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And that's where when enough people continually use it and it stays around, then obviously there's something to it, right?
Absolutely.
Whether you understand it or not is irrelevant. But, there's statistical studies on this that, if enough people choose a certain product, that it's the wisdom of the crowd and it wins every time. So you can take that into consideration as well.
Exactly.
For your apps.
Yeah. So look at your apps, know what you're getting, and then be safe out there.
Yeah.
Just know that just because you're downloading it from a legitimate place doesn't mean that app isn't collecting things you might not want it to.
That's a good point. So all right, everybody.
Well, hey, with that, I want everyone to look, follow, and we're coming to you live here from, I don't have the reader in front of me.
We have a separate segment that'll come in on that, so we don't have to do that anymore.
See, this is why we have a professional team of Nate behind us.
Thank God. And Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Yep. Our neurons fire sometimes at the wrong time. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to say something now. So instead, I'll just say like, follow, and we'll see you again soon.
We'll see you on the next Sitrep. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Hey, remember to like and follow us here on our podcast and YouTube channel. And we are coming to you from the Studio 809 Community Podcast Studio at the Next Us, which is a professional cooperative environment for small businesses here in downtown Colorado Springs. You should check them out.
Come check it out.